Hi, I'm Jamie. Welcome to Teachers Tech, and it's great to have you here. Today, I want to show you how to use Power Pivot in Microsoft Excel. This is the third lesson in my intermediate Microsoft Excel tutorials. So if you want to learn about Power Query in Microsoft Excel, or maybe more about pivot tables, functions like VLOOKUP, take a look at my lessons 1 and 2, and I'll link those in the description and up above in the card. And I'll have more future intermediate tutorials. So if you want to stay in touch, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified when I put those out. But today is all about Power Pivot in Microsoft Excel. And Power Pivot, the main thing I want to tell you about what I like about it first before I get to it is that you can take multiple tables from multiple sources and bring them into a pivot table or pivot chart. So if you've ever wondered how you do that, because usually if you go ahead and start a pivot table, all you can do is bring in one table. But when you use Power Pivot, you can create a data model by making relationships between the different tables, and then they all show up in your pivot table or pivot chart, and then you can really dig deep in analyzing the data. And that's what makes Power Pivot so great. You have all these different ways to bring in data from all these different sources. You can bring in millions of rows of data, and then you can perform calculations on those rows, add measures, key performance indicators. And today on Teachers Tech on Power Pivot, I'm going to go through all these so you get started on how to use Power Pivot in Microsoft Excel. So first of all, I want to show you how you can add Power Pivot to your Microsoft Excel. And this is free to do, and it's very quick, because right now, if you look across my tabs, there is no Power Pivot there. It's an add-in. So what I'm going to do is go to File and take a look down below at Options here. So I'm just going to click on Options, and then I get the Excel options. We have add-ins right here. And now Power Pivot, as you can see right here, Microsoft Power Pivot for Excel is a COM add-in. And to go there, all I have to do is drop down and go to COM add-ins and hit go. At this point, I just need to check what I want. And at the very bottom here, I have Microsoft Power Pivot for Excel. I'm going to go ahead and just place the check mark on that one and hit OK. And as I do this, take a look at my tabs up above when I hit OK. And you can see it was instantly added. And when I go to Power Pivot, I have my new ribbon here that I'm going to be walking through all these different features for you today. I do have some practice files for you to follow along with me today. And if you take a look in the description, you'll see a couple different links, and they are to these files right here. You're going to see student and school and tuition fees. So I just want to show you real quickly what's in these. I'm not going to dive into them in depth, but let's pretend we are a school here. We have student information. All of this is just fiction here, just made up names. We have some courses, all the different courses that our school has here. So there's a number of different courses. There's grades that students received through different semesters in here. So you can see there's a GPA here on the side, and we have all the different semesters listed here that go back a few different years. And we also do have in our other sheet, this is just showing how many courses they're enrolled in and how much it costs per course. So just one more Excel practice sheet there. So I just wanted to point those out. I'm going to go ahead and actually just minimize this one, but I am going to close this one right here. So this is the student and schools, because when I bring the data into Power Pivot, I can't have it open here. So I'm going to be bringing this in first. So I'm just going to close this down on this one. I don't think I made any changes, but I'll go ahead and hit save. So now I'm just on a blank Microsoft Excel worksheet here, and I'm going to bring in that data. So to do that, I'm in Power Pivot. I've selected the tab here, and we need to build a data model. So what a data model is, it allows me to bring in all these tables and build relationships between them. So first of all, I got to go get the data, then we'll build the relationships. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Manage. Now, at this point, I get, you can see Power Pivot for Excel open up. And take a look at all the different external data. These are the different ways I can bring data in. So we can bring it in from a database, and you can see the different servers available. We can bring it in from a service. And we have other sources here too. So if you take a look, connect to a data source, we have all these different ones you can connect to. In today's example, we're just going to bring in this Excel file right here. We're going to bring in from here, and then we go find the path. So I'm going to go ahead, hit next. And now friendly connection name, that's fine with me. Excel, I'm going to leave it as that. I need to browse to where those files are. So I'm going to hit browse. And I have them right here. So I'm going to bring in student and school. Remember, it has to be closed for you to bring it in, and hit open. And does it have headers? Yes, this does have headers on it. So first row as headers. I'm not going to bother testing this. I know this will work here, and I'm not going to go to advanced, but I'm going to hit next here. Now, at this point, you see all the different tables that are in here. So what I'm going to do right now is just go ahead and select the top one, because I want to bring them all in. I could select individual ones if I wanted to, or what I could do is if you wanted to preview. So if I wanted to preview student information, I could select that one and go to preview and filter. And I could go do some filters, but I can preview to make sure I have the correct data coming in. I'm just going to hit cancel. I'm selecting all my source data, and I'm going to hit finish. And you can see it goes through with success. We like the green check marks here, and it shows me all the information brought in. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close now. So if you take a look at the bottom where the tabs are, you can see all the tabs are there. Just the same information that we brought in from Excel now into Power Pivot. But let's say if that file updated, so you have a connection now to that Excel file, and if you were putting more information, maybe more students went into it, what you would need to do is go up to and refresh, and then this data would update in here as well. Okay, now the next thing what I want to do, we're not quite done. We have to bring in one more spreadsheet. So I could go back and show you the way I did it before with bringing in sources, bringing that file. But what I want to do is, first of all, I want to close out of here. So I'm just going to go up and hit the X, and you notice it goes right back to the sheet one that I was on with nothing on it. But if I click manage again here, it just opens back up again, and then I'm back in with my Power Pivot. So you can go back and forth by just clicking that. You do have to save your file. So if you're going to save, you could save, this whole book here, and then everything will be remembered with your Power Pivot as well. Okay, so we have one more sheet we want to bring in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up. So this one I want open. And I want to point out, I could have selected the table. So I'm in this table, let's say, and then what I could do, could have done to each one is just add to data model from that file, and that would work. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you that I can go ahead. I'm just going to go Control C here. So I'm copying with Control C, and I'm going to go back to that other worksheet. And this is where I was working in Power Pivot. I'm just going to paste that information, Control V, into here. And I'll just go ahead and size it up here so you can see. And now if I go ahead and just select this, I'm going to go add to data model, and this also will add this to the data model. So you can see now I have TBL tuition here and plus all the other tabs. So I could, I know this is the table here, but I'm going to go ahead and just call this tuition fees to label it like this. And now I have all the information, the data that I want and what we're practicing on today in here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to diagram view and start setting up the relationships between these tables. So I just want to point out before I go and start these relationships. So if I'm on student info, you can see that there's like student ID here. If I go over to, let's say, grades, I have student ID also there. I'll click on grade, student ID here as well. So you can see there's connections between these different tables. If I go to courses, we have a class ID over here. And if I go to let's say grades, we have a class ID over here. So there's some connections made, you can see by just the labeling, but Excel doesn't know that, Power Pivot doesn't know that by itself. So we have to create those connections between those tables. I'm going to go, if you look, we're just under the Home tab, and we're going to go all the way over, and we're going to go to Diagram View here. So I'm going to select Diagram View. Now, there's 5 tables. We only see 4. At the very bottom, I can change the display here. I'm going to drag this out so we can drag this smaller so we can see things a little bit better. So now these are the 5 different tables I have. These right here, you can see I can change the size of these. This has 4 in here. I think this one should be fine. You just click and drag. So I want to be able to show you all the different columns in each of these tables here, and I can size them so I can see everything. Just makes it easier when you're making your relationships like this. And if I add more columns, they'll show up in here. And I'll show you that in a moment when I do some calculations after I have my relationships. So I'm going to move some things around just so I can visualize what I want a little bit more when I set up these relationships. And I'm going to be moving this grades right over to the middle more. And I'm going to move the student's info over here. So I also like to kind of move mine around to kind of help visualize this a little bit. I'm going to move this down as well. So I'm going to move my courses down here, and I'm going to need a little bit more room. So I don't know why I have to size that up. I just like the way it looks. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more room in the display, and I'm going to move semesters down here as well. Okay, so I'm going to keep grades here. And I'm going to keep tuition fees over here. So the reason I did this is the way I like to do it to help me visualize what I'm setting up. So I know each student here can have many grades, and each course can have many grades, and each semester has many grades. And I can see that there's a relationship. If I look student ID here, I see student ID here, class ID to class ID, and semester ID to semester ID. Names, the columns don't have to be named the same. I did them so I can easily find them when I'm making the connections. So to make the connection, so if I look at student ID here, and all I have to do is click and hold on my mouse, and I'm going to drag it to student ID here, and it's going to make a relationship between these here. So if I take this, wherever I put this, that relationship stays there. I could break the relationship with this line. If I go ahead and right click on it, you can see I can make it inactive, I could edit it, or I could delete it as well. So if I made the wrong relationship between 2 different columns, I could go ahead and delete it and create another one, or just edit from here. Okay, so I want to point out here too, we have this star and we have the number 1 over here. And like I mentioned before, I said, well, one student could have many grades. So this stands for many, and this is 1, and that's what it means. So one student could have many grades. If I go over to my class ID, I'm going to drag it over to class ID. So each course could have many grades. So you can see the 1 and to here. And same thing, I'll go to my semester ID and just drag it over here to semester ID. And like I said, I don't have to have them labeled the same, but the value has to be the same in between those 2 different columns. I couldn't have one integers and one being letters or anything like that. They'd have to be the same on it. Now, so I have those. You can see these are all the 1, and it's many when it comes to grades here. And when I do the pivot table and pivot chart, these are the relationships that I'm going to be working on when I display. I do have this one more table here, and I'm just going to make one connection here. And you can see I have student ID to student ID, and this is just some I'm going to be showing some calculations with the columns, and I need this relationship to connect. And I'll show you when I create the calculations, having that relationship here allows me to go over to this table. From here, I can go to this table, go grab something, and be working over here on this table here. So these are just some steps what I like to do. I like to kind of organize visually my tables and how I'm seeing things. I don't have to do that because those relationships, when I drag them around, you see how they still hang on. I just like to visualize it this way. So we have our relationship set up now. I want to show you with some calculations first that we can do with the columns to kind of really show you how powerful this is with Power Pivot to add these calculations to this. So I would need to go back to data view here. So I'm just going to select data view. And we're going to go over to the tuition fees here, and we're going to perform our first calculation. And this won't be through a relation. It'll just be on this table alone. So I'm going to go ahead and perform a calculation on this one. So I will need to use a formula. What I want to have happen is just very simple. You can see there's enrolled courses over here and there's tuition per course. I want to know how much this is going to be in total. So what I'm going to do, first of all, let's go ahead and change our column name. I like to change that first before I do my calculation. So I'm just going to click up in here and change this here. So this is going to be called total tuition here. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and then just click off of this. And if you look, the whole column is selected now. And where I'm going to put my equation is right up here. So you can already see that the equal sign is all ready to go here. So I'm just going to click up here. And what is it that I want to perform? So I need to go 5 times 3,750. But I don't want to times those from cell to cell. This is going to be based on the column. So all I actually have to start doing is typing the column name. So this is called enrolled courses. So if I start typing enrolled courses, you can see I get a couple different options. Now, the tuition fees is the name of the table and the enrolled courses is the column. So if you see kind of this double step, here's just the name of the column. And this will work for me here. So I'm just going to go enrolled courses. And I'm going to multiply. So I'm just going to use the multiplication here. Multiply what? Well, it's tuition per course. If I start typing tuition per course, it's this one I'm going to use. You can see there was the other one here, but I'm going to go tuition per course right here. And I'm going to hit enter and then watch what happens to the column total tuition. So I'm going to hit enter. And now I have total, and I can format this information too as well. So you can see up in formatting, we do have our dollar signs here where we can add this to any of these. So we have our formatting that you can do inside this. Now, what I want to show you now is I'm going to go back to my diagram view here. Just select this and you can see everything's set up, but take a look at tuition fees. Now I have a new column called total tuition here. So I just wanted to point that out. As we add the columns, these get updated here in the relationships and the views here. So I'll go back to data view now. And what I want to do is perform another calculation though. I don't want to perform it on this one here. I'm going to go to student info. Now you can look at the bottom. I'm on student info tab here. And I'm just going to scroll over to the very end. And you see that there is a payment received column here. So I know I just calculated total tuition, but I have payment received. So what I want to know is the amount owing. So I'd have to minus that total tuition minus the payment received. So I'm going to add a column at this point. You notice you can't just go to any column and start typing something in, right? So these are going to be made to perform those calculations on it. If we're adding more of the data, that's where we can go from our original Excel file. And like I mentioned before, we can refresh it. And then everything we're creating in here and the calculations will still work with the new data that comes in. So again, we're going to create a new column. It's going to be right here, and it was going to be called amount owing. So I'm going to just type amount owing right here. And that's good. I'm just going to hit enter, and you're going to see the equal sign come up here. So what is it that I want to calculate? So I know it's on the other table. And so that's going to be the first number, right? The amount owing minus the payment received. So if I go ahead and start typing related. So if I go REL like this, you get related. So this function allows me to find related tables. And so I've made that relationship to the tuition fees here. So if I go to related, it shows me here all the different columns from that one that I have the relationship to. So what do I want? I want to know total tuition. It's right here. So this is the column I just created. So I'm going to go ahead and select this just like that. I'm going to add a bracket here to close this. So I'm just adding the bracket to close this up. So what's the next one? Well, this is a simple operation. It's just subtraction here. So what am I subtracting? Well, it's going to be payment received. So if I start typing payment received, It's right here. So I'm going to select it and go ahead and hit enter now. And watch this get populated here. So now I was able to make this calculation on student info. Since I have a relationship with tuition fees over here, I was able to pull that column and use it in a calculation over here. So that goes, I wanted to point out that's the importance of the relationship if I go to diagram view between here. So this allowed me to see here, when I went from this one, it allowed me to see all of these different columns that I could perform the calculation in. So that's just a couple steps of the calculation. I'm not diving deeper into any of the other calculations, but I want to show you what's possible once you had the operations. But there's a different type of calculations you can do. It doesn't have to be just with the columns. You can use measures as well. So what's a measure? Well, to get to the measures, there's a couple different ways that we can do it. And we'll start from being inside Power Pivot, but then we're going to move out and I'll show you the other way that you can do it too. So measures are more calculations, and I'll give you an example of one here. Let's do a really simple one. I want to total all of this tuition here. So if I go to, let's say, this spot, if I put my equals, so we're just like in Excel with a formula, and what do I want? Well, I want actually a total here. So I know this is going to be sum. If I start typing in sum, I get my function, I select function. What is it that I want? Well, that was called total tuition on tuition fees. So I can go to my tuition fees, total tuition, and I'm going to select this one, and I can go ahead and close this up. Hit return, and I have a measure. Now you can't see it very well. I can stretch the columns here so you can see it. I can format it here also. But measure one, I don't want this to be called measure one. What is this? This is tuition total of all, right? So if I go up here into where the formula is, and if I just highlight this, and I'm just going to say that this is tuition total, and I'm going to put all. Just like that. So just so I know, you can call it what you like, but then if I go ahead and just click off of this, it will get updated here. So that's how you would go and change the name. You can see now I can add a little bit more room. That's a measure there. So let's do another one here. What I want to know is the total amount of enrolled courses. So I want it right here. I'm going to I'll put my equals in, and I'm going to do my sum here of all courses. So sum, and this is enrolled courses here on the total of here. So here it is, tuition fees, enrolled courses. I'm going to go ahead and select this one, and I'm going to just hit enter, and you can see it just added the bracket at the end too. Measure one. Well, again, I don't want this called measure one. What do I want this called? Let's just call this total courses, total course amount, just like that. So we can change that if we want, but if I click off, now I have a couple measures and I can stretch this out. And so we have two different measures there that we created. Okay, I'm going to go back to my student info one here, and I'm going to show you how you can use these measures across different places because these are created now. And if I go to, let's say, well, first of all, I want to know how many students I have. How would I do that? I want to add up. I could try to add up in different ways, but I'll show you a formula that you could use here. So if I go in here, and if I'm going to go to the equals again, and this time I'm going to start typing this distinct count right here. So I know these numbers are all unique here. And so what it's going to do is count through all the unique numbers because each one has to be different for each student. So I'm going to go to this one. Well, this is on the student info. What's this called? This is the student one, right? So I would go find that one right there. So let's go find student ID here. And that should do the trick right here, student ID. Hit enter, and I get a count of here. Well, I can't see what's in there. I'll just stretch this out again so we can see 18. I don't want to call measure one. I want it to be called amount of students. So we'll just say amount of students, just like that. So amount of students. Now I can take measures and use them with each other too. So if I want to find the average cost, let's say, of what the amount of each student is paying on average. So I have in tuition fees, I did calculate what did I calculate? The tuition total here, total tuition all. And I have the amount of students here, which is 18. So I need to divide those two to find the average amount of each student is paying. So if I go here, and I'm going to do another formula here. So if I put equals this time, and it's total tuition all, so I start typing total, and look here, this is the one that I have. I have tuition total all. I have that other one, but that's not the one I want, but it has this new symbol for measure. I'm going to choose this one, and it's just a division. And what was the other one? Well, it was this one. It was the amount. So if I start typing amount, it was the amount of students right here. So I'll select it, and I'm just going to hit enter, and I'll get a total here. So you see another measure. I'm going to stretch this out so you can see. We can change your name. So I'll just put average, whoops, not that. I'll just type average cost per student, like so. And I'll click off of it, and I can stretch this out. So that measure, if I ever needed it again, and I can go and format it also up here. So that's some ways that you could use measures. But another way that you could do this is to go right from the ribbon in Excel. So if I go and close out of this, what I can do is add a measure right from here. So under the Power Pivot tab, I'm going to go to New Measure. You can see I can manage my measures too, so all those different measures that I've created, but I'm going to go to New Measure. I can pick my table from here. So if I was looking, I can go all through these ones. So what is it that I want to find? I could go to grades. What do I want to call this? Let's say I'm doing the average of the GPA. So I'll just type average GPA. I'm not going to bother giving it a description here. What is it that I want to do here? So I want to do an average here. So I'm going to start typing average of something. So what is it? And I know in that one I have grades, and I have it should be the grade here. So I have grade. I'm going to go ahead and select this one here. And I'm just going to hit close the bracket here. So it's just going to be average. This is just going to be a number. And now it's going to be 2 decimal places here. That's fine. I'm good with that. Decimal number, all of this is good. I could go and check the formula. It seems everything is fine. Get the green check mark. I'm going to hit OK. So where did this go? It's not on this one. Well, this wasn't even the table that I told it to put on. If I go back to Manage now, and I put that under grades, so grades, and I'll just stretch this out here so we can see it. Average GPA 2.49. So it went through here and made the average of 2.49. So now I have this measure called average GPA. And I did that from just adding it that other way. So a couple different ways you can do calculations, from the columns to the measures. Try playing with different ones, getting used to those. Once you build them, they can add a lot of power to your Power Pivot. So now we're at a point where I want to display this data, and I want to use a pivot table to do this. And I'll also show you in a pivot chart, because this is what it's all about. It's all about taking all of that data. So like I said at the beginning, all those millions of rows, going through, performing these calculations, adding measures, and then you're able to really display what you want to dig through that data. Okay, so we can add our pivot table in a couple different ways. Right from Power Pivot, if we take a look up here, we have pivot table here, and I'm just going to do the drop down. You can see our different options right through here. This tutorial, I'm just clicking pivot table, and I'm just going to select it. And where do I want it? Well, I want this to a new worksheet. So I could go existing if I want, but I want a new one, and I hit OK. And just like that, if I take a look over on the side now, all of the different tables are in here. So remember, usually you could only bring one table in, but now that I built that data model, built the relationships, I'll be able to pull information from different tables, and it will show up in the report that I'm building. Now I'm just going to go ahead and just delete this one really quickly here, because I do want to show you can insert it kind of the normal way. If I go insert and then pivot table, Well, we don't want to go from table range. We built a data model. So we could go from this right here, and then we could go new worksheet, hit OK, and it brings us to the same place. So I just wanted to show you a couple different ways that you could start your pivot table from, but you do need to grab that data model in order to do it. So now on this step, let's try picking some of the fields to build a report. So what I'm going to dig down and find out here is I want to find out how the different courses are going throughout time to see if there's any fluctuations with different semesters on this. So what I'm going to do first is I want to see the courses show up. So my courses, I'm going to go to this table, just open it up, and I'm going to put a class name. So I get class name, and it puts it into my pivot table here to begin with. You can see those are all the classes we offer. Now, I also want, let's say, a grade next to this. So if I go ahead now, if I go grab a grade and take a look, notice that we created these measures and everything. They're also in where I could be grabbing them in. But in this case, I want a grade. So I'm going to select grade. Now, the issue right here is it just did a sum. If I look over here, it did a sum of these. Well, I don't want a sum. I want an average of the grades for here. So I can change this. I'm going to just drop down and I'm going to go to value field settings, and I want this to be an average, but I also want to change my number format to number and 2 decimal places like that. So I hit OK, and now that's better. So this makes more sense to me. I have an average. I get to kind of see of all the courses, but let's dig a little further now. Let's say, well, I want to know also by semester. So if I drop down, I'm going to pick semester here. So now it's showing me fall. This was the average. You can see the different years of it on it. And I could even go a step further. And if I was going to go and find, let's say maybe student information, I want the last name here. I could put a student ID, but I'm going to go last name. Now it even breaks it down. So I can look at algebra by the fall, the different students in it, what their GPA in it. So as I go down, I could go through this way. And remember, with pivot tables, I can drop down and filter through it. So if I wanted to see a specific subject, I could just go through here. I'm also going to show you how to do some slicers. When we put the pivot chart in, I'll show you how you can add some slicers to go through this information as well. So all these different tables that we have connected, I'm able to build a pivot table from selecting different ones. So you can go ahead and try and see what you find through here if you want to dig down and find different data and see what works for you when you're building a pivot table. I want to add one more thing to this pivot table, and that's going to be a KPI, a key performance indicator. So how we do this is I'm going to go back to pivot table here. And you can see we have KPIs right here. And I haven't shown you how to use this yet, but what we're going to do is go to new KPI, like so, and we get this here. So remember, I made a measure, and we have to base this on a measure. I made a measure average GPA. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to select this one, average GPA. And it's going to be an absolute value here. And it's going to be out of 4, I'm going to put down. So I have to change it. If I didn't change this, then this would all be skewed off. So it's going to be 4. So just like that. So what's going to be the green? So what's an indicator that would be best for me for green? So I'm going to say, actually, I don't mind that. So when I clicked in there, it said 3.2, 1.6, divided this up. I could slide this if I wanted it different on it. I'm not too worried. I just want to demo this, how this could work, and we'll just leave it. We'll leave it right there. So if they're 3.2 and above, it'll be green, the target. You can see how we could divide this up into, if you needed more areas to divide up, you can do that, and you can change your colors. So I'm going to go and just choose this one right here. So, and it will look like these. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, what I want to show is on the side, notice this. So I have a new column that went in here, right? I have 0, 1, -1. These don't show the lights that I picked. They're showing that 1 would be above average. You can see it, and 0 would be neutral, and -1 would be the color, or be red, it'd be below. But if I go and open this up and turn off status, and then just turn on the goal, you can see that comes up, or this. you can see I have different ones. So if I turn back on status, just like that, after I click it on, click it off, and then I have these indicators right here. So I just want to point out how you can add these KPIs to this. So another quick visual, because this is, when you have so much data, little visuals like this can really help you kind of target in and saying, oh, what's up with this one? Why is it that color? So that's how you could use KPIs. So now if I want to add a pivot chart to this, I can be under the insert, and you can see there's pivot chart right here. I could also go back to the other way when I showed you when I was in Power Pivot, when they had the insert pivot chart from there as well. But I'm going to go ahead and first of all, before I do this, I don't want to have this in my pivot chart at all. So I'm going to just turn this off. And the other thing is I'm not going to have names in my, so I just want to see a pivot chart this time. And it's going to be just kind of seeing the difference between each semester. And I want to be able to see it on each class. So right now I have a filter on, and I can change the filter here as well. So if I didn't want it to be algebra and I wanted to select all, you can also do this from beside here. So if you go over and find where it is and you drop down, you can see the filters come up here. So if I select all, hit OK, everything's there. Now I'm just going to go back to what I was before on this, because I just want to start with, we'll say one of these. Just it'll make it a little bit easier when we visualize our graphing. So now if I go and go up to pivot chart here, and I'm going to go click this pivot chart, and I can pick kind of what I want. You can see how it has the column one. If I hover over it, it shows me each semester how things are going. I could maybe do a line. Maybe I'll do a line here like this and hit OK. So I could hit OK, and just like that, now I have this one here. And I could filter through. So just like I showed you before, if I wanted to pick a different one, maybe we'll go with American Society, hit OK, and you can see how it changes. So we could go through, we get our pivot chart. It allows us to view our data, what we exactly want to see. I could go through and edit this chart to make it look nicer. I'm not going to do this in this one. Like in my other tutorial, I do get a bit more into this one, but this is more just like what I want you to show you the data that is being chose. But let's say I want to add a slicer to this. I don't want to drop down over here and picking each one. Slicers are a great way to make it interactive, quickly change what you're looking for. So if I go up to slicer up here, see all the, because I have my relationship, my data model, I can pick what I want. And what was it? Well, it was the class name. So if I go class name, hit OK, now I have this slicer, and I'm just going to go ahead and move it down here just so it fits into the shot. And so now I could go through, if I go back to algebra, I have this slicer that allows me to go through and check to see, gives me that quick visual of what each course is doing through the different semesters to see if there's any any ones that fell off all of a sudden. Some of them don't have every semester that they're offered all the time, but as I go through, it gives me that quick visual to see if anything is standing out. So I hope you like this walkthrough of how to use Power Pivot in Microsoft Excel. We covered a lot of information here today, but I hopefully got through of how great of a tool this is to bring in when you do have so much data, millions of rows, where you can perform those calculations, and then you can dig down with the pivot tables or your pivot charts, and to really, where you can share that information with other people and really see what's happening. So thanks for watching this time on Teachers Tech. Let me know what you're looking for down below in the comments if you're looking for more intermediate Excel or what type of Excel or other tech. Thanks for watching this time. See you next week with more tech tips and tutorials.